Hi, this is Alex, and if you love music, well, you've come to the right place because we're all about albums. I know it's the year end and everyone has a best of list of something or other, and so I thought I'd jump in and have my best list of the best music in 2021. 2021 has been actually a great year for music, a lot of great releases, and I think there has been something for everyone this year. So for the good news first. It has been such a busy year for vinyl pressing that it was said that if you did not have your album in by June, you probably will not get it pressed in time for Christmas. And the bad news, well, vinyl prices keep going up, up, and up. And I find myself many times purchasing the CD due to the astronomical price of some of the vinyl releases. But fear not, I think this is very much like the economy. Things go up and they eventually come back down. In my list of the best albums of 2021, I will include all albums that had physical media available in 2021. So if the release date was in 2020, but the physical media didn't come out in 2021, I will include those albums in my list. So I will give you my top 20 picks for 2021. I will not be counting down as typical for a best of list. Rather, I am going to present the albums as they came out in chronological order. So here we go. In January, we have a British singer-songwriter. She is quite young, and it's her first release, and this is none other than Arlo Parks in her album entitled Collapsed in Sunbeams. I believe this is a wonderful new record. It's happy sounding. It has a sound of the 60s and 70s. I really would recommend you pick this up. Arlo has won already the Brit Music Award for Best New Artist. She also won the Mercury Prize for the Album of the Year. This album reached number 3 on the UK charts. And also she is nominated for a Grammy Award in the category of Best Alternative Music Album. So again, Arlo Parks, Collapsed in Sunbeams, great record, check it out. The next album is from February, and again, February I only had one pick for the month, and that is the album by the Weather Station entitled Ignorance, and this is on Fat Possum Records. This is a Canadian folk band, and it is fronted with the songs written by Tamara Lindemann. And this is an album that touches upon the climate crisis. It is rather a stripped-down album, but quite excellent. I also really enjoyed this record, and I would recommend you give it a listen. March brings us a female singer who is quite talented. This album probably you would say is in the jazz genre, although she can sing just about anything. Her name is Veronica Swift, and this album is on Mack Avenue Records. This album is entitled The Bitter Earth, and it is a follow-up to her debut album entitled Confessions. Veronica is a young jazz vocalist, only 27 years old, and she really has more of a classic type voice and could probably sing just about any genre. Not only is this a great record with great vocals, this also is a great sounding record. It's almost of audiophile quality. So if you love female vocalists with a classical type sound to their voice, I would recommend this album highly. That's Veronica Swift and her album entitled The Bitter Earth. Well, I guess April brought April showers because I did not have any picks in the month of April. The month of May brings us many great releases. First up I have is Lord Huron. This is on the album Long Lost. For those of you who have seen my previous video when I talked about what's on my turntable back in June, this was on my turntable. I really love this album. This is a indie rock band. They sound most like the Fleet Foxes and probably have a sound that the rhythm section is more based in a more country type flair, such as the band. This is the 4th album by the band, and this band is led by Ben Schneider, who writes all the songs and is their lead vocalist. I can't say enough about this album. I really love this record. and I play this quite often on my turntable. It's a pretty good sound quality, but really what's great is the music on this album. So if you love indie rock, especially a band like Fleet Foxes, check out this album by Lord Huron. Next up is a reissue, and this reissue is one of the great albums, considered probably one of the early, quote, Americana albums, although I just think this is just a great musical album. It is the great album on the Atlantic label, which is Crosby, Still, Nash & Young, Deja Vu. This is the 50th anniversary box set. So what comes with the 50th anniversary box set? Well, first you're going to get the 33 RPM original album on the Atlantic label. Next, you're going to get a book with beautiful photos, as well as an essay written by Cameron Crowe about the band. And finally, if you open up the album, you also get, as you can see, 4 included CDs. The 4 CDs are the original album, it has demos, it has outtakes, and it has alternative takes as well. Deja Vu has sold nearly 8 million copies. That's over 7 times platinum. And this is ranked number 220 on the Rolling Stones 500 Greatest Albums of All Time, which came out in the 2020 edition of Rolling Stone. And finally, of note is that this album, Deja Vu, is the best-selling album of each of these artists individually. So if you don't own this album, get it. That's as simple and straightforward as I can be with this one. Also in May, we have the band Lula Wiles, and this is a trio of females with beautiful harmonies, and this band was featured on NPR, and this album is entitled Shame and Sedition. This album deals with today's struggles, and we should reconsider the way we live our lives. It is a bold statement. These 3 young women are activists. They're from the state of Maine. One is a Native American, and they have a lot to say. If you're interested in a protest album, this is a great album. Additionally, the music is quite good, and you will hear some soaring, beautiful harmony vocals. So if you want to get into an album that makes you think a little bit and at the same time is great musically, check out this album by Lula Wiles entitled Shame and Sedition. Next up, also in May, we have the multi-instrumentalist Kishi Bashi, who I've reviewed this album on prior videos, and this is entitled Emigrant. And this album deals with the harshness of the West and how we can overcome this. And this album is an album of hope, of people getting together and understanding we're all humans and we should all work together. I should mention that this is a 6-track EP, so it's not a full-length album, but it's worth tracking down. This is really a beautiful sounding record. I think that that's where you get the feeling of hope. And if you haven't heard Kishi Bashi, you should listen to him. He has a wonderful singing voice, and he plays many of the instruments on this album. And I think this album is going to surprise you. So check it out. Kishi Bashi came out in May as well, and this one is entitled Emigrant. And our last release of May that I picked is none other than Sarah Jarosz. This is her album Blue Heron Suite. This album she was commissioned back in 2018 to do, and the album came out just in 2021. This album deals with her mother's struggles with cancer and her overcoming it. And this talks about the heron as a symbol of hope for them. Sarah has a wonderful singing voice, and this album has a tone of tranquility, which I think she brings about rather nicely on this record. I think most of you, when you hear this record, will relax and will do some contemplating. So once again, we have Blue Heron Suite by Sarah Jarosz. I highly recommend it, and it's a wonderful sounding record. Check it out. Now we move to the month of June, and the month of June brings us a fantastic reissue. This reissue is on the Impulse label. Impulse is celebrating its 60th year. For those of you who don't know, Impulse is one of the top jazz labels, and this is a phenomenal record, an audiophile type recording, and this album is Oliver Nelson, The Blues and the Abstract Truth. This album features many great jazz musicians. This album is surprising to me in that I loved it so much. I would put this album in my 20 most favorite jazz albums of all time, believe it or not. It may not be critically acclaimed like that, but the sound is wonderful. Even those of you who don't enjoy jazz, I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy this record. Some of the names on this album, for those of you who do know jazz, include Paul Chambers, Eric Dolphy, Bill Evans, Roy Haynes, Freddie Hubbard, a who's who of jazz. So check this one out. You won't be disappointed. Oliver Nelson, The Blues and the Abstract Truth. Moving on to the month of July. July brings us another reissue box set. This is a 4-album set, and it is none other than maybe the greatest singer-songwriter of all time, Joni Mitchell, and this is entitled The Reprise Years 1968 to 1971. This includes her 4 albums, Songs to a Seagull, Clouds, Lady of the Canyon, and her classic and one of the great albums of all time, Blue. Blue is in the top 10 albums of all time on the Rolling Stones top 500 greatest albums. This was mastered by the great Bernie Grundman. It's on 180 gram vinyl. The sound quality is excellent, better than anything I've heard before. And I do have several copies of Blue, and this one sounds the best. This picture you see on the cover was drawn by Joni Mitchell. Many of you know that she is an artist, and several of her albums previously have her artwork on it. I don't think I have to say anything about these 4 albums. They're all classic records. Maybe the first one you don't know too well. The first album, Song to a Seagull, also has a new mix for the entire album. This brings out Joni's vocals a lot better. Interestingly, David Crosby is the person who produced the original album. Moving to the month of August, first up is the band Watchhouse, and this is their self-titled album. You may know these people better by their previous name, Mandolin Orange, which is a Americana folk band, and this husband and wife team do have startling vocals, and these songs are very well crafted. For those of you who do enjoy Americana, this is a must listen. This album does have a little bit of pop sensibility, so it's a little bit easier for those of you who may not love Americana. I'm sure you're going to love this album. I think this Watchhouse album has been on my turntable maybe more than any other album on this list. Next up is another reissue. This reissue, I believe, came out in August. I may be wrong. It may have been September, but I'm going to say it's August. Anyway, this album needs no introduction. I've talked about it ad nauseum on several previous videos. It is none other than the greatest jazz album of all time, Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. And you're asking, why the heck do we need another Miles Davis, Kind of Blue? Well, I gotta tell you, this is the best clean sounding album. You get deeper into the music on this album. It's on this high quality 180 gram clear vinyl done by Analog Productions. And if I open up this case, you will see when I pull out the album that the album is beautiful. It is very high quality. It's a tip-on done by Stoughton Press, and it has beautiful photographs. And this is probably the best reproduced cover I've ever seen of this album. So if you love Miles Davis, especially Kind of Blue, I would highly recommend this version. I think it's the best one out there today, and you should get on it quickly. This is the 33 RPM version. They're almost out of this, even though Analog Productions put out 25,000 copies of this album. But if you want to, or if you miss this one, I hear rumors that they will be putting out a 45 RPM version of this album. I don't know when. It could be in 2022 or later. But anyway, this is the definitive copy of the album, and I highly, highly recommend it. Moving to September, first up we have Jose Gonzalez and his album Local Valley. Now, this album is beautiful sounding. If you don't know Jose Gonzalez's vocal style, you will be pretty taken by it. It's very pleasing, very down to earth. It's a indie folk type sounding album. And if you just want to relax, close your eyes, and have a smile on your face, this is the album. So for any of you who are feeling a little down because of COVID and many other things going on in the world, this is an album to listen to. I guarantee it'll make you happy. Also coming out in September is a Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab one-step album. And I'm sorry that I'm showing you this album because it's no longer available. It's totally sold out. They pressed 7,500 copies, and it is the Eagles' Desperado. Now, of all the Eagles albums, this has always been my favorite album. Little tidbit, as you see the 4 original Eagle members on the cover, this is the only time the Eagles appeared on the cover of their album. Now, this is a one-step, so it's a 45 RPM, 180 gram super vinyl by Mobile Fidelity. Sounds fantastic. And I would say of all the Mobile Fidelity one-steps that I own, this one is my favorite. Not only do I like the album, but I think this fixed so many of the minor problems I found with the other album. But Mobile Fidelity took care of all that, and this is a great sounding record, as well as a classic Eagles album. It deals with themes of the Old West, as you can tell by the cover. And if you can't get this one, try to get the original album. It's well worth it. Eagles Desperado. You should check it out. At least stream this album. It is quite sensational. Moving into October, we have one of my favorite artists. They are an Americana duo, husband and wife, believe it or not. This is Gillian Welch and Dave Rollins, and this is All the Good Times. This is on the Aimee label, and as I talked about on previous videos, this is a very excellent sounding label. This is a truly audiophile demo type record. This album was recorded in a home studio, and you hear every vocal inflection and every strum of the guitar. It's a very stripped down album, but if you like Americana, this is a must-have album. Again, I love this record. It's one of my favorites of the year, All the Good Times by Gillian Welch and her husband, Dave Rollins. Next up, also an October release, is a new artist to me. This is her first, I believe, full-length album, and the band is known as Ren. However, this is the artist Lauren Speer. This album is entitled Leftovers, and I actually have listened to this album. I just kept on the promo sticker, but I have opened it and played this album several times, so rest assured. She is a Canadian singer-songwriter, exceedingly talented. This was a great find for me. She reminds me of Courtney Marie Andrews. And what I love about this album, and not too many albums do this, when you listen to the songs, you could swear you've heard these songs somewhere before, but they're all original songs, so no, you haven't heard them before. This is just a wonderful record. If you like singer-songwriters, it does have a folky type sound. She has beautiful vocals. I really recommend this one, and that is the band Ren, and it is entitled Leftovers. Moving to the month of November, we come to one of the most anticipated album releases of the year. And this is none other than Adele and her album 30. It's been quite a while since a release by Adele, and this is no slouch of an album. This is a double album on white vinyl. It is on the Columbia label. That's who distributed the album. And this album, you probably don't need any introduction. You've probably heard songs on the radio, on streaming services. Maybe you saw Oprah's special on television. It's quite a great record. The album deals with Adele's divorce, as well as her struggles as being a mother and at the same time balancing being a music star. It is rather remarkable that this album is the best-selling album in the US and the UK in 2021, as this album has been out for a mere 1 month time. I do think this is Adele's best album. The vocals are great. Now, interestingly, two things. Number one is because they wanted to make sure there were plenty of vinyl available when the release came out in mid-November, is that they had to have 500,000 vinyls pre-ordered ready to go. To do this, they had to stop a lot of albums being pressed at the time just to be able to get the Adele album out in time for the holidays. This is the third #1 album for Adele. This album has made every top album list. Some people even put it as high as #1. And rest assured, Adele, you made my top 20 list for 2021, so be proud. Also in November, we have one of my favorite artists of all time, as you know, Aimee Mann, with her album Queens of the Summer Hotel. Now, this album is quite interesting. It does sound like a show, and that's because Aimee was hired to write songs for an upcoming musical. And this is based on the book and movie, if you've seen the movie, on Girl Interrupted. This album deals with mental health issues, and this deals with a woman who not only sees what's happening to her, but also comments on all the women around her going through some difficult times. Now, this is not a very happy record, but it is a great musical record nonetheless. Aimee Mann, Queens of the Summer Hotel. And for those of you who want to find out further about this album, you can click on the link, as I have reviewed this album as a standalone video. Next up in November, we have a duo that hasn't been together since 2007, album entitled Raising Sand. And this is none other than the great Robert Plant and the great Alison Krauss teaming up again. And this time the album is entitled Raising the Roof. This album has fantastic harmony vocals. Many of you would say, what? Robert Plant and Alison Krauss? Well, their harmony vocals work great together. These are all cover songs, but there are great interpretations. There are some great musicians backing them up on this album, including Bill Frisell on the guitar, who's one of the greatest living guitar players in the world today. We also had Buddy Miller, who's no slouch himself. And we have also Mark Ribot, and the producer of the album, T-Bone Burnett, plays as well on this album. This is another great sounding record. I think it is close to audiophile quality, and I highly recommend it for you who love the first record. I guarantee you'll love this album as well. So that's Robert Plant and Alison Krauss's new release that came out in November, Raising the Roof. Next we have Americana singer Lara Lynn, who's had several albums, but this was a special release for Black Friday Record Store Day. It's called Live and Unplugged from the Vinyl Tap. Now, this album was recorded in the record store. It is 3 musicians, herself, as well as another guitarist and a cello player. And this is a great sounding recording, and the songs are first class as well. For those of you who like folk and Americana, this is a must-have. Lara Lynn, I think you should check her out. If you don't know about her, check out her previous albums. Great voice, great songs all around. Well, there you have it, my top 20 lists from 2021. We'll see what 2022 brings, but I am anxiously awaiting the year to come because I know there's going to be a lot great releases out there coming. Mobile Fidelity has already announced several of the one steps that they're going to be doing, and you should check out their website to find out. I do know they're going to be doing the Van Halen catalog, and they're going to be releasing more of the Eagles albums amongst many others. And now for last video's unknown album. The first unknown album is a favorite of mine. It's Mystery to Me by Fleetwood Mac. It's their 8th studio release, came out in 1973 on the Reprise label. This was a great lineup. It consisted of Bob Welch and Bob Weston on guitar. We had obviously Mick Fleetwood on drums. We had Christy McVie on keyboard and her husband John McVie on bass. Most of the songs on this album were written by Bob Welch and Christy McVie. And this is some of the best work Fleetwood Mac has ever done prior to their Buckingham and Nicks days. This album only sold modestly. It peaked at number 67 on the Billboard Hot 200 list. Some interesting facts about this album. It's the last Fleetwood Mac album to be recorded in England. Also, this is the last album for Fleetwood Mac until their album Behind the Mask to feature two guitarists. Two other interesting facts. The song for the album, Keep On Going, was penned by Bob Welch, but it was sung by Christy McVie. And this is one of the few tunes ever written by somebody else to be sung by a different member of the group. The other interesting fact about that song is Bob Welch actually played bass on that song instead of John McVie. John McVie plays bass on every other Fleetwood Mac song, so this is also a kind of interesting tidbit. The second unknown album is entitled Lost in Space, and this is the Aimee Mann album coming out in 2002 on the Super Ego label. Some fans and critics consider this Aimee's masterpiece album. This is my second favorite Aimee Mann album. I do love this record. It is quite outstanding. And this album is a very introspective album. It's a little bit more sedate. It deals with loneliness, and so it is slightly depressing, although still the song structures are magnificent. The lyrics are first rate, and this is some of the great abilities of Aimee Mann, who is able to manipulate words and lyrics just like a poet would do. I think many of you out there would agree with me that Aimee is probably one of the most underrated artists of our time. And now for this video's unknown album, the first unknown album. Great, hope you got that one. The second unknown album. Great, hope you got that one too. As always, if you think you know the answers, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, this is Alex with All About Albums. Thanks for listening, have a great day, and remember, keep them spinning.